is and should be a touchdown. Here we go. Bryson Barnes has got his back behind him. It is Jaquindon Jackson. Here's the snap. Bryson Barnes looking deep. He's got a man. It's caught! He's gone! Touchdown early! And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to College Football Wraparound. I'm Cooper Naylor. I want to begin by just kind of saying that I'm sorry that I haven't been here to do anything in quite a while. I mean, I've kind of dropped the ball with that. But we're going to be here today, and so we got a lot to get into. Of course, we're going to talk about Indiana Ohio State. That's coming up here in just a little bit. We're going to talk about Army and Notre Dame. That game's being played in Yankee Stadium. They're in the Bronx, New York. So that's an interesting football game. BYU and Arizona State. This has got a huge implications as to the Big 12 title game, and plus also big for college football playoff implications of what could happen. So we're going to get into that. Plus, of course, this is college football playoff rankings, big stuff going on with the rankings right now, which, I mean, I don't fully agree with the way they got the rankings right now. So let's go ahead and dive into our topics for today. And like I said, it has been a interesting season to say the least. And since I've been here, we've had a bunch of upsets. I mean, Ole Miss beat Georgia. I'm being honest with you. I did not expect Ole Miss to beat Georgia this season. For that matter, the idea of Lane Kiffin coach football team getting a big win is just interesting to me. But of course, we got a lot to get into. Let's start out by talking about these rankings. And so first, I'm going to show you the rankings. Then I'll show you as far as how they're seated, where like the projected matchups that we would have in the first round as of these rankings right now. So let's start. All right. So here is your rankings. As you can see, you got Oregon number 1, Ohio State number 2, Texas is 3, Penn State 4, Indiana 5, Notre Dame 6, Alabama 7, Miami 8, Ole Miss is number 9, Georgia's number 10, Tennessee 11, Boise State 12. And the reason why I put 13 and 14 in here is because BYU right now is the highest ranked Big 12 team, meaning they would be the 5th highest ranked conference champion, meaning that in all this craziness, what it all entails is that BYU right now is projected to be in that 12 spot for the playoffs. Now, that's your rankings. Another thing you may be wondering, why is SMU ahead of BYU? Well, to be honest, I don't know. I mean, unless the committee really does not like that loss that BYU took to Kansas last week. But let me show you the projected first round matchups as of right now. So you would have BYU going to Ohio State. You got Alabama going to Notre Dame. You got Georgia going to Penn State. Ole Miss going to Indiana. Now, here is something interesting about this. Okay? And if you don't already know the way that the playoff is set up, and that is that the 4 highest ranked conference champions would get the byes. So that would mean Oregon, Texas, Miami, Boise State. They have the byes. Then, because BYU is the 5th highest ranked conference champion, and because they do not sit inside of the top 12, they have to be the 12th seed, which knocks Tennessee and SMU out. But mainly it knocks Tennessee out. And Tennessee's ranked number 11 right now. So you're going to sit here and tell me that 11th ranked Tennessee wouldn't have a chance. I mean, we still got a lot of season left. But personally speaking, this is part of the problem with this playoff system. And I mean, I understand. Yes, conference champions, yeah, we should reward them. But I mean, let's be honest though. Are we going to sit up here and say that BYU, and I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you, okay? Because I think there's a lot of people out there who have been talking about, oh, 12-team playoff, this is going to be great. But here's my problem with it. I think the way it should have been, if you're going to do a 12-team playoff, get the 12 best teams. This is not the 12 best teams. What this is you're probably getting like maybe 9 of the best teams in college football, 9 or 10. 9 or 10. Then you have 2 that really probably shouldn't be in this position they are, and yet they're going to have a chance to play for a championship. I will be honest with you. Boise State and BYU, they may be good football teams, but let's be honest, are they really a team that could win the national championship? I mean, that's the thing I feel like we've lost, is that they've changed college football to be a lot like the NFL. And so, yes, these matchups you have right here, they would be interesting. December 20th and 21st, but I mean, out of all of these, I'll be honest with you. I see maybe 4 teams that I think in the first round that could make to win a championship. Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss. Okay? I mean, Indiana, we'll see today how they play against Ohio State, but right now, I don't know if I could really sit here and say, oh, I think Indiana's going to win the national championship. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But Indiana, I think, is a good football team. But as far as are they one of the top 12, I don't know. So it's interesting. And then also another thing is like where they're placed. So we'll go back to the rankings real quick. Just the regular rankings, just show you where it's at. Okay. You have Oregon and Ohio State at the top 2. I don't think there's really any complaint there. I mean, legitimately right now, I think they're probably the 2 best teams in college football. Then you have Texas. Okay, interesting. The problem is their one loss was a pretty bad. I mean, you looked really bad against Georgia. And then as far as your wins, you haven't really beat anybody. So, I mean, take that for what it is. Then you have Penn State and Indiana at 4 and 5. Okay. I need you to answer a question for me. Who has Penn State beat? Who has Indiana beat? And I mean, yeah, Texas should probably be up there with the questioning about who they actually beat. But I mean, that is my question. Texas probably, I don't know, Vanderbilt's their best win? I mean, come on. How is. Okay, Notre Dame. They got to win against Texas A&M. Okay, I'll give them that. That's the 15th ranked team in the country. But your loss to Northern Illinois, that is awful. I would say this. I think it's a worse loss than Vanderbilt this season because Vanderbilt, I think, is a decent team. But Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois at home. So we're going to sit here and say Notre Dame is better than Alabama? I got so many things that I could probably say about this. Okay, for instance, Miami. How are they ahead of Ole Miss, Georgia, and Tennessee? Okay, I'm just being honest with you. Okay? Miami has struggled against teams all season. They lost to Georgia Tech. I don't know if you can sit here and tell me that Miami, if they were to play against Ole Miss or Georgia or Tennessee, that Miami would beat them. I don't see it right now. So, that's the question I pose to you today. If you look at these rankings, and I mean, throw the records out and just go off of if you watch the teams and you look at the strength of schedule, and then you look at who they have beat. Okay? Alabama should be a whole lot higher than what they are. Ole Miss, higher. Georgia, higher. Tennessee, higher. Now, I know what you're going to say. SEC bias, SEC bias. It's not SEC bias, folks. It's just that I mean, Texas, who is Texas beat to really be considered the third best team in the country? Who's Penn State beat to be considered the fourth best team in the country? Who is Indiana beat to be the fifth best team in the country? Who's Notre Dame? I mean, besides Texas A&M, I mean, I would argue that Notre Dame, out of those four I just named off, Notre Dame probably, if you take away that Northern Illinois loss, Notre Dame has more of a case to be in that top six than Texas, Penn State, or Indiana. I'm just being honest with you. If you go off of who they beat, and I think that needs to be considered a whole lot more than what we give credit to, especially if you got a one-loss Notre Dame and they beat Texas A&M on the road. Alabama, they got wins against Georgia. They beat LSU. They beat Missouri. They beat South Carolina. I mean, you go look at the rankings right now. Alabama, they got 3 or 4 wins against ranked teams. You look at it, the argument is that, what are we valuing in these rankings? I think that's the question that you pose. But one last thing before I move on. Go back and look at these matchups again. BYU against Ohio State, I don't think the cold would really mess with BYU because, they're kind of used to the cold. Alabama going to South Bend, Indiana in the middle of December? Georgia going to Penn State, middle of December? Okay, interesting. Ole Miss going to Indiana. What's all this got in common? I think what the committee's doing here is because last year they got so much hate for putting Alabama ahead of Florida State that what they did here is they said, you know what? Let's say no more SEC bias here. And let's make it where these teams, legitimately, put these SEC teams up in the cold weather in December and see how they do. I think that's what you legitimately got with this. I think they do not want to see an SEC team host because the committee knows that would be a tough game for, say, like an Indiana who is not used to having to go down to the SEC and play. It's just different in the South. I'm just being honest with you. In the SEC, got to be honest with you, these teams, they play a gauntlet of a schedule. And yes, if you're a Big Ten school, you can't help it that your schedule was, excuse me, you can't help it that your schedule is put together the way it is. But again, why are we discrediting these SEC schools? Yes, they're 2 lost teams, but go back, watch the way the season's been. Okay, Tennessee beat Alabama, but Georgia beat them, but Alabama beat Georgia. So they're just beating each other up. That's all that's happening in the SEC. But the SEC is so stacked right now. You could legitimately put a bunch of these SEC schools in, and they would beat a lot of these schools that you see in the playoff rankings. But I've been talking about this for way too long. Let's move on and talk about Army and Notre Dame games being played at Yankee Stadium today. You got undefeated Army, which has kind of gone under the radar. They're 19th ranked team in the country. Then you got Notre Dame, who's number 6. This game's at like 6 o'clock tonight. I will say this, and I'm going to get some stats pulled up for it too, because I want to get you some information. So, give me just a second. All right. So, to kind of look at this game, um, so I mean, if you look at Notre Dame, like I said, they've won 8 straight games and only lost coming to Northern Illinois. They had the big win against Texas A&M. Riley Leonard this season, um, I think he's looked decent, but players to watch today, and this is coming from ESPN. They've got Bryson Daly, the quarterback for Army, who's rushed for 21 touchdowns himself, tied for second in the nation. And running back Kanye Udo has 9. And so, Notre Dame running back Jeremiah Love has rushed for a touchdown in 10 straight games, tied for the second longest streak in Notre Dame history. So, really, what I'm interested in seeing, and I think the big thing here, Notre Dame, this is a game I believe this game's been built up to be big. I think for Notre Dame, I think this is a game where you go and you say, you know what? We are about to go prove why we should be in the playoff field and go and smash Army and say, you know what? You're not as good as what everybody's saying you are. And I mean, I'm not no disrespect to the Army because I mean, hey, I'm very patriotic. I love this country. But I'll say this. Right now, Army I don't think is as good of a football team as Notre Dame. Just from a football standpoint. This is a game, if you're Notre Dame, this is take care of business in Yankee Stadium. So that's just my opinion. I think Notre Dame today, they've got to come out and look like the much better team. And I think it's the run game, like I said, but then their defense has got to show up and really play good tonight. I think I'll give Notre Dame the edge here, but I'll be picking games here in just a minute. But Notre Dame today, I think, is going to. This is a game that I think they'll win, and so we'll see. And then let's turn our attention to BYU and Arizona State. This is a interesting football game, folks, because this has got a lot of implications for the Big 12 championship today. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that if I think, I mean, I gotta look at this for a second, but I'm pretty sure that if this stands the way that it is, if Arizona State beats BYU today, Arizona State would move ahead of BYU for that chance to go to the Big 12 championship. Then, as long as Arizona State wins out, they're going to be in the Big 12 championship game, most likely playing Colorado. Colorado today has got to handle business against Kansas and then take on Oklahoma State on Friday. So this is the Big 12 championship. This is interesting here, okay? BYU, like I said, they are 14 in the country right now, according to the CFP. I will say this. I think BYU and Miami, I think, have been on the same kind of, I mean, play very similarly as far as they've played a lot of close football games this season. And today, you're going up against an Arizona State team that I think could potentially give you a lot of trouble if you're BYU. Do not be shocked if Arizona State wins this football game. I'm just being honest with you. I just doubt BYU a lot this season because from what I've seen, they haven't played incredible football. And again, as far as the playoff is concerned, I have not seen BYU play good enough to actually have that chance to win a championship. That's just me being honest with you. So, this is an interesting football game this afternoon. I believe it's a 2:30 kickoff. So, this is one I think a lot of people are going to want to watch. And like I said, it's got huge implications for the college football playoff. And not only that, but the Big 12 championship game. It's going to be huge. So we'll see how that goes later today. And then, of course, the big game today, the top 5 matchup, Indiana, Ohio State. Very, very interesting football game today. Ohio State, they got one big win, and that's coming against Penn State, who is right now number 4 in the country. Ryan Day, he's got a 5-0 record against Indiana as Ohio State's head coach. This is Kirk Cignetti's first time as a head coach for Indiana going up against Ohio State. This is going to be an interesting football game. And something, while I was watching the pregame show on Fox, that one of the analysts brought up is that between the previous 2 wins that Indiana had against Ohio State was like 36 years. I think it was like late 1951 and then somewhere in like 1988. So it's been 36 years since Indiana beat Ohio State. I think that's an interesting, very interesting stat. But this is going to be a good football game. I'll say that. At least I hope it is, because the matchup I think a lot of people are going to want to see is that Indiana offense against the against that Ohio State defense. That's going to be interesting. But more interesting than that is going to be Indiana's defensive line against that offensive line for Ohio State, because they lost. Ohio State lost, I think it's Seth McLaughlin, who was at Alabama last season. He's out today because he had like an Achilles injury. He's done for the season. So if you're Ohio State, that's interesting because you're going up against a good defensive line in Indiana. That's going to be interesting to watch. What does this Ohio State run game, who's got 2 really good running backs, what do they look like? Or does Chip Kelly look at it and be like, okay, we're going to struggle running the football, so let's try to get Will Howard to get the ball to Emeka Egbuka a lot. I mean, I think that's what you got to look at here tonight, or here to this afternoon. And then Indiana, I think they're getting healthy at the right time. Curtis Rourke is healthy and ready to go. I think for Indiana, this is going to be an interesting football game. So, of course, this is going to be a fun one here today. But let's take a commercial break, and we'll come back and pick these 3 games. All right, welcome back, everybody. It is time to pick some football games here today. And I'm telling you, we've got a great slate of football here tonight. So let's get into it a little bit. We're going to pick these 3 games we talked about, but also we're going to look at some other games too. But before I get into before I really get into picking the games, one last game I want to talk about is Auburn and Texas A&M. I will say this, okay? Auburn has struggled all season long. And then I will say this. This is not a game, if you are a Texas A&M player, I don't think this is a game you need to overlook, okay? The reason why I say that is because you look at Auburn. They've played pretty much a lot of teams they've played, they've lost to, They played incredibly close. So this is going to be a close football game tonight. I mean, I would not be shocked if Auburn did end up winning this football game. Now, of course, I'm not picking Auburn to win the game. I'm picking Texas A&M. But Auburn has got a really good chance here tonight to really ruin A&M's chances at an SEC title game, in which at that point I think would knock them out of playoff contention. So, another game to really keep your eye on, Alabama and Oklahoma. Alabama going to Oklahoma. That is interesting. And the reason why I say that is because for Alabama, again, this is a team you do not want to overlook. Oklahoma, yeah, they have struggled, but I think they're in the same boat as Auburn, and that is that they could really damage someone's season at this point. And so if you're Alabama, this is go take care of business tonight. Miami is in the same mode against Wake Forest. Ole Miss coming up in a few minutes. They're going to be in the same boat as same boat. SMU, same thing. So I mean, we got a lot of very interesting football games that these teams, they got to take care of business, and as long as they do, then hey, they're going to be fine. But like I said before, this is take care of business, do your job, and win the football game. Now, let's get to picking these football games, these three that I have here. Starting with Army, Notre Dame, and I kind of told you my pick already, but I got to go Notre Dame. I don't see a world where Army wins this game, so give me Notre Dame. BYU and Arizona State, I'll say it. I got to go Arizona State. I don't think BYU is an incredible football team, and I think last week they got exposed by Kansas, and I think they lose 2 straight. Give me Arizona State. And finally, the big game coming up in about 18 minutes. That's when they'll kick the ball off. Got Indiana and Ohio State. This is a football game. It's going to be very interesting. But personally speaking, I just Ryan Day has not been great in big games. But today, Indiana hasn't played a team like Ohio State. Give me Ohio State to win this game. And folks, that is all I have for you today. Been great to be back doing some college football content here for you. We'll try to do some more stuff. Maybe today, maybe later. We'll see. But for now, thank y'all for watching, everybody. We'll see you later. Goodbye, everybody.